And of course, proper health care. Not many persons know this, but right after the emancipation and during the 1840s to the 1860s, there was a massive cholera outbreak that decimated more than 10 or 20% of the Jamaican population. And we have had similar health epidemics afterwards. And then there is the issue of housing and land ownership. And then the issue of public safety and crime and violence. And you can trace these features of the struggle coming all the way up to now. It's a long struggle. But a part of that long struggle, which in a strange way you'll see when I say what I'm about to say, certain connections, is that after slavery, Jamaica became a net supplier of talent to the world. Whether it is to build the Panama Canal, whether it is the reconstruction of Europe or the building out of cities in the United States, or the migration into Cayman, Antigua, Barbados, Trinidad. Jamaica has been a net supplier of talent to the world. Obviously, it is the case to the point where a potential president of the United States, the vice president who ran, had Jamaican heritage strong. Her father, a Jamaican. That struggle, that long struggle, has led many Jamaicans seeking opportunities, whether it is better housing, better education, better roads, safety and security, economic opportunities to go elsewhere other than Jamaica. And now we are all over the world, in almost every country. And the truth be told, I visited China, and I was able to have a town hall meeting, not as large as this one, but considerable. I went to South Korea. I was able to have a meeting. I was in Belgium. All over Europe. The truth is that long struggle has spread our people all over the world. And it has been good, in a sense, because it has created considerable human capital for us. And we don't complain about the remittances that flow. Though I do often reflect on how productive the talent we have exported is in the countries that they have found residence, and how they have contributed to the GDP of those countries. And you do wonder, what have we lost? What could we have achieved if we had good economic management, if we had a solid rule of law, if we had good infrastructure? What could we have achieved? So I go back to my original statement. We are all proud to be Jamaicans because with all the adversities, we have achieved quite a bit. But we could have achieved so much more. So the question is, as Prime Minister of Jamaica, am I going to just sit back and try to live on the exceptionalism that is natural to us? We run the fastest in the world. We have great music. Is that going to be the definition of us? Or are we going to write a new chapter in our story? The economic success of the Caribbean, the Singapore of the Caribbean. Are we prepared to write that chapter? And are we prepared to do what it takes to achieve that? So that the stipend for our overseas students can be paid. So I didn't go into politics to just, be able to brag that we are the fastest people in the world. Or we have reggae music. That's not why I went into politics. I went into politics because I saw that Jamaicans were not prepared to make the connection between their wishes and their wherewithal. We all want these great things, but we don't want to make the connection between the things we want and what we must do. And so there needs to be a politics that helps the people of the country to understand that all the things that we're frustrated about and all the things that we want can be achieved if we build the wherewithal to do it in our economy. That has been a challenge for us to focus on building the economy. And let me give you an example that some of you in this room may be able to relate to, and some of you would probably look it up in history. I think our politicians always have a good intention to correct the inequities of the past. And of course, one such good intention was that we should be able to provide free education. And it is reported in several places that one prime minister stood up in Parliament and announced that we will have free education. There was no budget, no preparation. It was just announced. Good intention. There was another program called Operation Pride. Good intention. We're going to develop lands and make them available at affordable and achievable costs to people. And some of you who are of my time and older would know that program. So, we've always had this intention to do good for our people. But we've really never focused on building the economy to do it. It reached a point in our history, and I was there to see it firsthand, when there was a great deal of complaint about road conditions in Jamaica. quite like now. And the solution of the government of the time was to do something called deferred financing. I don't know how many of you recall that deferred financing scandal that occurred in the 90s. And all that was that the government wanted to build roads, didn't have the money, and essentially said to contractors, all right, you go ahead and build the road, and in a future financial year, I'll pay you. So it was essentially a way of incurring debt without bringing it onto the books right away. And that mentality continued. We need to fund recurrent expenditure. We need to fund the impact of a storm that devastated roads and houses and schools. We'll just borrow. And borrowing became a feature of how we try to fulfill the good intentions that we had. And it was quite good for a long time. People became very wealthy from this appetite for borrowing, to the point where one of our former politicians, pointed out that this became the greatest transfer of wealth from the poor to the rich because of the high interest rate policy. And this appetite for borrowing, this appetite for financing development by borrowing, came to a head in the 2008, 2009, 2010, when the country reached to the brink of collapse. Some of you may recall that period of time. It coincided with a global financial crisis. And at that point, we had to take a very serious look at how we treat with debt. The debt reached as high, by some accounts, as 151% of GDP. We had wage issues still. We had issues to do with national security. We had hurricanes and other weather events. And then we had the massive debt, where we were staring down a default. And that forced us as a country to make a decision as to how we're going to treat with debt. That's the first time in Jamaica's history that the country and its politicians had to reckon with all the things we want versus how we're going to achieve it. And I think that reckoning has been good for us. We went through some very difficult times from 2008 onwards, having to be very disciplined with an IMF program, putting in place the necessary legislation to curb this appetite for borrowing and to ensure good fiscal management of our affairs. And when I became Prime Minister for the second time in 2016, I made a commitment that Jamaica will no longer be considered the basket case of the region by virtue of how we manage our financial affairs. I went to the IMF the first time around, and I had an opportunity there to speak with the then managing director and her team. And after finishing that discussion, I had asked whether or not there would be any consideration for the difficult position that Jamaica is in. And I don't want to say what the response was, but the response was not encouraging. The response was essentially, why should we give Jamaica any consideration when Jamaica has not been disciplined in the past? Why should we give any consideration when we're not giving consideration to other countries? Other countries are taking responsibility. And so when I came back from that meeting, I said it was sobering. And from then, I took the position that Jamaica must stand on its own 2 feet. Nobody's coming to rescue us. Nobody's coming to give us any favors. We must do what is necessary to rescue ourselves. It is within our abilities to do it. We must recognize that you can't borrow your way to development, and neither can you tax your way to development. You have to build a strong economy and treat it like the engine of your vehicle, because it is the economy that is going to deliver the things that you need. The roads, the water supply, the housing, and the stipend. I keep going back to that because I need everyone here to make the link between what you desire, what you ask for, and the ability of the economy to deliver it. Because the transformation of the Jamaican from this paradoxical state of achieving quite a bit but still not achieving its true potential can only be changed into a state of realization, a state of fulfillment and manifestation of our true potential if we start to pay attention to our economy. The challenge, of course, is that people don't see the economy as something that is of them, or that they are a part of the economy. We see the economy as over there belonging to them, some rich people, and we are over here suffering. And that needs to change. We need every Jamaican to realize that they are an economic agent, that they are a part of the economy. More than that, they have rights to the economy and rights in the economy. We need every Jamaican to understand that the wages that you're paid in the public sector doesn't just fall from the sky. That the road that you want is not by the wave of a wand. That it comes from the deliberate and instrumental management of the productive resources of the country, of which you are a critical part. And that the role of government is to empower you to be the productive economic agent. So, Jamaica has solved a part of the equation. And the part of the equation is that we now have fiscal rules that determine how much we can borrow, or if we borrow at all, and what we spend. I've been Prime Minister now for for 9 years, and I've presented 10 budgets, or I'm about to present the 10th budget. And I can say to you that our debt to GDP ratio will now be at about 68% in the next budget year. Coming from, as I had said, its heights of about 151% of GDP. This is the lowest it has been since the 1970s. It has been a struggle because it means the roads that you would have liked, the hospital situation, the housing situation, the water situation, you couldn't do it. But now at 68% of GDP, meaning that, as I had explained it before, that if you decided to pay off the debt today, you would still have something left over. Before, when you're at 151%, if you paid off the debt, you're still left with 50% of the debt. But the more you pay off the debt, the more space you have for sustainable expenditure. The better metric for how profound the change is in paying off the debt is that from the tax revenues collected in 2014, 33% of the tax revenue went to pay interest. So all the money that we collected in the budget, 33% went to pay interest. You know what that percentage is today? Anybody can tell me? 18%. So in other words, there's more of the tax revenue to spend on the things that people want. Now, how do we make this part of the political economy? Because for most Jamaicans, they don't care about that. It's of no moment to them. Their interest is, I just want the road fixed. My road stay bad for how long? I just want it fixed now. And I want to fix your road now, but I want to fix your road now without having to come back to you and say, hey, I went to borrow, and so though I fixed your road, I have to pay back for it, and so I have to put a little bit more tax on you. They don't make the connection. It's not a part of the political economy as yet. And while I report this great achievement of the reduction in debt, the great achievement is that for 10 budgets, Jamaica will have no new taxes. Ten budgets. Never happened before. 10 budgets. And I hear somebody putting out a tweet to say, me dropping a pothole and a lot of me have to take to come out of it. Yes, my friend, I know. But we're going to fix that pothole in a sustainable way without taking any more taxes out of your pocket to do it. And that is a major achievement in the long struggle. Because if we didn't solve that problem, the struggle would be meaningless. Having sacrificed to reach here, we can say, yes, as a people, as a country, we have solved this fiscal issue of how we manage our public finances. And we are now setting the stage for financing our development from our resources. That's a big thing. Now, the other challenge is how do we expand our resources to have faster and greater development? So the last decade, we focused on just ensuring that our expenditure is within our means, that government is not a burden on you for more taxes, and that we are not borrowing. And so we are at that steady state now. Big achievement for Jamaica. And indeed, the last time I spoke with persons from the IMF and the World Bank, they were very much giving Jamaica much praises. Jamaica is now considered the poster child of fiscal discipline. But again, I can see somebody writing the comment, fiscal discipline can't yam. Yes, my friend. Yes, my friend. Fiscal discipline can yam. Can yam. What are the benefits of the fiscal discipline? Well, firstly, because we build resilience into our fiscal program, we have buffers. So when Hurricane Beryl struck, we didn't have to borrow. We didn't borrow a cent. We were able to give over 14,000 Hurricane Beryl recovery grants, not of 20,000 and 40,000, grants going up to $400,000. Because we had buffer in our economy. What are the other benefits of the fiscal discipline? You know, exchange rate was a big problem a decade ago, a couple of years ago. Everybody quarreled about the Jamaican dollar and the instability of the Jamaican dollar. I don't hear anybody quarrel about that these days. And by the way, do you know that Jamaica has a freely floating exchange rate? Oh, yeah, you quarrel about it? Not in Jamaica. No, but Jamaica has a freely floating exchange rate. You can go to the bank and buy any amount of US dollars you want. How did we achieve it? Fiscal discipline. Our foreign exchange reserves is at the highest it's ever been, over $5 billion. Yes. And then there are some people who say, see, you store up the money, you have reserve, and we are suffer. Again, the fiscal discipline. Because the moment you remove the reserve is the moment the currency goes. So you need that. That reserve gives you the stability that keeps everything stable. And of course, you know, the stability helps you to control inflation. Because as a part of this fiscal management framework, we have a truly independent central bank. So before, under the old model, because of the high levels of borrowing, you know, and people are using the dollars to buy foreign exchange, government had to raise the interest rates to keep the dollar in check. And that created, you know, an inflationary environment. Now, the central bank targets inflation. And we have been able to control inflation. So even after COVID, we have been able to bring inflation down fairly rapidly. And so we are now within our target range of 4 to 6%. Inflation is about 5% in the country. So this is a big achievement. And I'm speaking to this audience in this way because I know you will immediately appreciate the profound change that this is to the Jamaican economy. Just now, I got a message on my phone from Fitch. Everybody here should know what Fitch is. Fitch is an international rating agency. And it makes interesting reading. If you have time, go on your phone and look up the assessment of the Jamaican economy by Fitch. It makes interesting reading. Fitch has affirmed Jamaica's rating at BB minus with a positive outlook. BB minus is about third on their scale of ranking. Barbados is B plus, which is just below Jamaica's rating. It's and I'll just read this section for you. Again, I know that there is somebody saying, so how that help me? You know, rating agencies don't just look at our financial position. They are an aggregation of a large volume of information about a country. And they are usually very good at determining what is happening in a country. So ratings fundamentals, continued positive outlook. Jamaica's BB minus ratings reflect stronger governance than the peer median. What does that mean? That Jamaica's management is better than countries in its peer group. I know me say so. So you don't have to believe it if you don't want to believe it, but that's the reality. It says significant progress with debt reduction, a sound fiscal framework, and a strong political commitment to deliver large primary surpluses. That's the rating agency's review of Jamaica. Debt to GDP has fallen to a forecast of 70.8% in fiscal 2024-2025 from a high of 135.3% of GDP in fiscal 2012-2013. Of course, in the next fiscal year, it will be about 68%. I urge you to read the review. Now, having achieved this, what's next? How are we going to get to the point where we are able to give the stipend to our students who study overseas? That's the question now. How do we get to that point? So some of you may have heard the government saying, we're going to pivot. And we chose that term carefully. Pivot is a move in netball, maybe in basketball. You know, you hold your position and you turn. So we are keeping our foot firmly planted on fiscal discipline and good fiscal management, but now we are turning and positioning ourselves for growth. Because the fiscal agenda it's good because you are using your revenues, your own resources, to treat with the needs of the people. But coming from Jamaica's position, where the unmet needs are so great, you need to find a way to expand your earned resources very quickly. Because what will happen if you don't do that is that the political pressure will get very overwhelming, and it will just destroy the fiscal sacrifice that has been made. Because even though it is a good thing to say, we are funding our development out of our resources, people get frustrated. People who don't have water for 40 years, and they see their neighbor in a neighboring community getting water, And then they say, "Oh, come, I can't get any water." And then I have to say to them, "I'm doing it within the budget." And then some other politician come and say, I will get it done for you faster. And then fiscal discipline goes through the door. So governments in our position have to now figure out, how do we expand the economy? How do we get the economy to grow? And that's the next struggle that we have. Because for the last 50 years, our economy really has not grown significantly. That's the challenge, growth. And how do we get growth? Well, first thing I'd like to say is that, growth is a function of productivity. That's the first thing. That each of us, we have to produce more. Secondly, growth is a function of innovation. All right, we have to do things differently. We have to become more efficient. We have to integrate technology. And indeed, we have to become creators of technology. And thirdly, growth is a function of diversification. You can't keep doing the same thing over and over and over again. After a while, there's a limit to what growth you can get for that. You have to do new things. And then growth is a function of complexity, meaning that you have to build an economy that is connected with all the other parts of the economy and connected with the world. So every output becomes an input. So let's start with that agenda then, the growth agenda. What is it that Jamaica is going to do? So firstly, we have to tackle the efficiency part, the speed and productivity part. Jamaica has to change its bureaucratic mindset. It takes too long to get anything done. The bureaucracy in Jamaica has become self-serving, looking over its shoulders, taking too long to make decisions. They don't take any risk. They are not interested in the outcome. They are only interested in perfecting the form rather than the function. It's frustrating to citizens. It wastes a lot of resources, and we lose opportunities. So there has to be a reform of Jamaica's bureaucracy. And I'll be speaking more about that in the months to come. We have taken some decisions that in the budget we will say what they are as it relates to ensuring that we can do business at the speed of thought. We have the fastest people in the world, but we believe that if it was done too quickly, it was not done well. And that mindset has to change. We have the fastest people. We need to be the fastest at business and customer satisfaction. So that is part of the growth agenda. Secondly, in terms of innovation and integration of technology, that can't be done unless we invest in education. So we have put together the Education Transformation Task Force. They have a report. We have a roadmap which we have started to execute. A big part of that is the building of 7 STEM schools. The truth is that Jamaica's economy is heavily service-oriented. We're a service-based economy. Service-based economies are dependent on people, human resources. And the only way service-based economies grow is unless you upskill your human resources. And right now, we're a service-based economy, but we are in the low level of the service chain. And so wages are low, precisely because skill levels are low. If we're going to leapfrog and make significant changes, where we must invest in the skills that are currently in demand. So whenever I say we're going to have a STEM school, there are those who say, no, you must also focus on the arts. And I agree, you have to focus on the arts. But I don't think people recognize the era in which we are. The top 20 companies in the world are all tech companies. And if we're going to pay the fees and stipends of the students overseas, that we need to be able to build the economy that can do that. And the economy that can do that has to be a STEM-oriented economy. We already have a competitive advantage in the creatives. I don't think we have done enough, but it is fairly easy for us to invest in it. Where we're going to have a difficult time is in getting the engineers. And that is going to be a whole new transformation of our education system, which is math fearful from a psychological perspective. And that's a massive change that we will have to undertake, from how parents transmit the psychological fear of math to their children, to how teachers teach it in the school, to how we reward it and praise it in the society, and give it a place of prominence, so that we too can participate in a real way as citizens of the fourth industrial revolution. The second and third industrial revolution passed us by. We were a slave economy, we were coming out of slavery, and all of those things passed us by. We cannot allow this to pass us by again. So that is the investment that we're going to be making in an infrastructure to create the workforce that is properly skilled to be able to participate in the digital and technological economies, which is our future now. Then, we have to talk about infrastructure. Because infrastructure is not only important for growth, infrastructure is important for us to be able to withstand climate change. Jamaica has legacy infrastructure. Our road infrastructure is what we inherited from the colonial period. And because we didn't have the fiscal wherewithal to properly maintain the infrastructure, and we weren't growing for 40 years, there was significant disinvestment in the infrastructure. So when you look at the buildings in downtown Kingston, in Spanish Town, in all our capitals, parish capitals, all around, it's 30 or 40 years outdated. We're going to have to rebuild all of that. And we have started. When you come back to Jamaica, go to Harborview and head on that new road that will take you to the Morant Bay Urban Center. It's the first purpose-built modern urban space in Jamaica for almost 50 years. And we intend to replicate this all across Jamaica as a means of stimulating the transformation of the built infrastructure of Jamaica. We are building new highways, but we are bringing them inland, because the history of Jamaica is that because we were exporting sugar and banana and cocoa and other things, the roads hug the coast to the ports. But with sea level rise and other issues, those roads are being destroyed very quickly. And they simply just can't carry. So we're changing all of that, and we're bringing our roads inland. where we have to build bigger drains because the drainage system that was there, which again another colonial legacy, just simply cannot carry the volumes of water that we now have. We're building in terms of, and I'm going to shift quickly now to security, another important element of growth. And we did a study, or we are currently doing a study on brand Jamaica. I promise you I'll be finished in 5 minutes. And that study, we're trying to rebrand. And that study essentially looked at, what are the positives of the brand and what are the negatives of the brand. And one of the negatives of the brand is the association with violence. We've become almost immune to violence. We almost sometimes are proud of it, that we are the baddest and the toughest and not recognizing that that is a significant disadvantage for us. So when you ask the question, would you want to visit Jamaica? Yes. Would you want to live, work, and study in Jamaica? Not really. Why? Yeah. And that is where our economic opportunities are being limited. So the same people who are, benefiting off brand Jamaica by portraying Jamaica in a certain light, they are limiting the ability of the government to raise the revenues to pay for the stipend of the students who are studying here. In other words, yeah, we get 3 million plus tourists, but the truth is we could get 6 million tourists easily if there was not this association. And it comes in a real way when we get a travel advisory because of it. And the people who perpetrate the violence and who portray the violence don't see themselves as the cause of the travel advisory, which limits the tourists to come, which limits the revenues of the government, which prevents the students here from the government having the revenues to pay your stipend so that you can get your education and come back to Jamaica and contribute. That's a reality. We're going to mash up that crime dolly house. We're going to tear it down. The gangs have been a large part of this. And I keep saying that when we use the term gangs, it's really a euphemism. Because when you hear gangs, somehow in the mind of the public, it is a set of disenfranchised youngsters who have been deprived of economic opportunity, poor parenting, and poor education. That may be the case for the street level people who are just, fodder for the gang canon. But the truth is that the gangs are enterprise level operations. They use violence as a means of economic benefit. They organize violence. So it's not that, you got to, there's a street fight and somebody pull a knife and somebody got, no. This is a telephone call, go for the gun, you see that boy over there, so? He might go work at 8 o'clock. You wait at this stoplight, and when him stop, you deal with him case. That's organized violence. It's enterprise level. Called my friend in Miami and said, hey, think them get, them get busted, police gone with them, send down a new set. And they pack a barrel, wrap it up in a plastic, put all kind of things over them to shield it, yeah, and then ship it back to Jamaica. It's organized criminality. That's not the fellow who is deprived and disenfranchised. And that must be dealt with in the harshest way possible. And that is why we have made the investments now. The police force, when we took over the government, was somewhere about 8,000 to 9,000. The police force is now 14,000. That's at establishment. And it has not reached establishment for a long time. We have made the investment in the human capital of the police force. When you look at the JCF today, in terms of man and material and women, it's a different JCF. We have made investments in leadership. I'm not saying it's perfect. It's a 150-year-old organization. Certain cultural practices are embedded, organizational issues, but it's still an improving organization that is led by highly intelligent persons who are well-trained. It's an information-driven organization, and I am very proud to say that the JCF is doing an amazing job in confronting the very dangerous criminals in Jamaica, and they have my 100% support. Similarly, we have invested in the JDF. We have moved the JDF complement from somewhere in the region of about 5,000. They are now 8,000. And the JDF continues to represent the country at the highest, and they play a very important part in the domain awareness, domain control, and internal security of the country. So I'm pleased to report that the investment in security, I mean, all the things that we've invested in terms of equipment and technology, I won't go into all of that, but we're seeing the results. Between 2023 and 2022, we had we had an 8% reduction in murders, and last year we had a 18.2% reduction in murders. And as I speak, we are at 24% year-on-year reduction in murders. And this month could possibly be the lowest month in 40 years in murders in Jamaica. Now, I know it's not where Barbados is. Right? It's not nowhere near there yet. But I want you to believe that we can get there. We can get there. But we have to change our mindset. We have to stop seeing the criminals as disenfranchised youth who the system fight against. And we need to start to see them as the system that is limiting the true potential of the country. Because that's what they have been doing. They are the cause of you not wanting to come home. They are the cause of you leaving. They are the cause of the travel advisories. They are the cause of the insecurity. And why we will always leave a door open for them to change their ways and join the hardworking members of the society. They must know that Jamaica is not going to tolerate them anymore. And I'm certain you will understand the seriousness of the statement that I've just made. So, Jamaica is going through a transformation. We report progress on the fiscal transformation, and we are on the pathway for the growth transformation. And it is my intention to one day being able to send our students overseas to learn, get exposure and return, and pay their stipends. God bless you.
I want to thank Prime Minister Holness for the very sober and inspiring reminder of the trajectory of our country's socioeconomic background. And of course, for their very empowering call to action for a stronger, more resilient, sustainable economy focused on delivering the development we all want. We have absorbed the profound change of Jamaica's positive outlook, and we were happy to hear about the Fitch's rating in real time. Prime Minister, thank you. We have also welcomed the call for a greater STEM-based focus as investments in our citizens to participate in the fourth industrial economy. I'm pretty sure we're all looking forward to visiting the Morant Bay Urban Center and traversing the smooth roads as we go to the south coast or the north coast. We gleaned it based on the discussion in terms of the road work. So, indeed, Jamaica's outlook is most promising. And we are grateful to you, Prime Minister, for the very steady leadership in this regard. At this juncture, we will now transition into the discussion segment, where you, our members of the Jamaican community in Barbados, will have an opportunity to engage with the Prime Minister briefly, because time is going. Nevertheless, we want to ensure that we have that engagement as in keeping with Jamaica's national diaspora policy, which is poised primarily on engagement. And diaspora engagement. Right. So without further ado, I will now direct your attentions to the microphones that we have at either side. We'll do it in the ordered way. You may raise your hand, right? And you may form a line by the microphones. Prime Minister, we also have a microphone for you right there. Let me turn it on. So, Prime Minister will be using the podium. So we'll start with this side, please. Please, and if you don't mind, you can share with us who you are quickly and where you hail from.
Good evening, Prime Minister and everyone. My name is Tara Frater. I'm an attorney at law here in Barbados. I was very, very heartened to hear, Prime Minister, about the increased focus on STEM education in the country, because I too firmly share that belief that it is going to be an important part of Jamaica's national developmental agenda and of our being able to carve a meaningful space for ourselves. So I wanted to learn a bit more about what that looks like in practical terms. What initiatives, if any, do we have with regards to attracting tech companies to Jamaica, to building that skill set, not just for students at the primary or secondary level, but for persons who are already in the workforce? Because we know, for example, that BPOs have been an important part of our economy for quite some time. But with the intervention of AI, for example, I think that's going to shift that significantly, and we have to prepare for that.
Yeah, very good question. So first and foremost, in terms of the medium-term strategy, it's to build out the educational institutions that can actually host the children in a STEM environment. You can't talk about STEM without labs, computers, and the other equipment necessary. Right? That's number one. So we need schools that have the labs and the equipment, and we have made the budgetary allocations to actually begin building those schools. We're committed to doing 7 STEM schools. So that's number one. Number two, you can't talk about STEM education unless you have STEM teachers. And we have been making the necessary budgetary allocations to give STEM scholarships to teachers and to partner with the micro college that has kind of taken on this endeavor from the private sector with Glenn Christian, one of our noted Jamaicans, who has taken on this big task of training STEM teachers. Thirdly, Jamaica has a broadband initiative. If you're going to talk about STEM and technology, the internet is important, and therefore internet connectivity to deliver the education but to also support the industry is important, and that program is going very well. We intend to ensure that we have broadband connectivity right throughout the island in even some of the most remote communities. We see it as a public good, and that's why we are investing in that. We have a digital policy as well, and though it is not part of the STEM strategy, you would know that Jamaica it's probably one of the only countries in the region to have set up a national digital identification system, the NIDS. And that that is now launched. I now have my national identification card. All of you who are here are entitled to come back to Jamaica and register for your national identification card. But what it does, it helps to create a seamless digital online population that can transact digitally. In terms of the AI, we have put in place an AI advisory council. They have just delivered their report. I have not had a chance to review it yet, so I can't tell you what is in it. It's just being placed on my desk. But we acknowledge that AI will transform many of the industries that we have, including the business process outsourcing industry. And therefore, we are trying to prepare for that transformation. And that may mean that we will have to make certain changes in how we train staff and provide businesses with support to cope with the changes that may happen in the technology that is used in the business process outsourcing field.
Before we continue, Prime Minister, want to kindly encourage us to have very brief questions based on the very limited time that we have in this very wonderful space. Thanks.
Okay. Good night to Mr. Holness and my fellow Jamaicans. I am Donika Codner, a first-year student pursuing law at Cave Hill. And I, like many others, initially chose Cave Hill because it was an economically viable option. However, the rapidly rising cost of living is making higher education increasingly inaccessible. Given this, how will the government ensure equitable access to higher education at Cave Hill for students from all socioeconomic backgrounds, including the provision of stipends for those pursuing degrees not offered in Jamaica, as well as the programs offered in Jamaica as well?
So when I took up the offer for the town hall, I knew that this question was coming. Look, the government considers it an important part of the Caribbean integration process that students, our law students, take up scholarships here in Cave Hill. I mean, it's important for regionalization. Even though the law faculty could potentially take up all the students who are Jamaicans who are here back home. And because of that, the government will continue to support. And I can't say in a definitive way now how much more support. But what you should take comfort in is that there is no policy change in the government to say that we are no longer going to support students at Cave Hill. Now, once it is the position that students should continue here, then there would have to be adjustment in the economic cost. And so I think you can take comfort from that yes, there will be some adjustment in the economic cost, but I wouldn't be able to tell you at this moment what that will be.
Okay, thank you very much.
Good night, Mr. PM. My name is Kirk Beckford. I work with the Central Bank here. When you mentioned STEM education, I thought to myself, hoping at training up these students to export them to the rest of the world. But that's not my question. A lot of the efforts on crime fighting, especially violent crime. And I heard what you said earlier, but something seems missing. I know you like the moniker Andrew the Builder, but what about a prison? We haven't built a prison since independence, and that seemed to me to be a missing piece.
The El Salvador model revolved heavily on that, where they have a high incarceration rate. Surprisingly, Jamaica is amongst the lowest in terms of incarceration rate regionally. In fact, Jamaica is the lowest. I don't think there's any other Caribbean country that has lower incarceration rates than Jamaica. So you are right in a sense that we haven't invested in prisons. It is a politically sensitive issue, primarily because of the view that crime is heavily a social issue rather than a matter of choice. And from a political standpoint, you would recall the situation when a former British Prime Minister visited Jamaica and offered a prison and the problems that that created. At this moment, at this juncture, I wouldn't be focusing too much on that, except to say that there is need for a new prison to be built in Jamaica because the old ones are really a humanitarian crisis. We have prisons that are more than 100, well, almost 200-300 years old, old buildings. And that is not reflective of the modern society that we're trying to build. So we're not seeing incarceration as the solution, but it is a part of what needs to happen. So my short answer to you is we do have plans to build particularly high security prisons to ensure that those people who we are currently incarcerating, those very dangerous high value criminals, are not able to stay from within the walls of the prison and direct crime outside. So that's where, so in terms of building prisons, that's where our financial effort will be to build a high security prison where the prisoners that we currently have and those who we will arrest will not be able to stay in those prisons and influence crime outside. So that's where our prison is, right?
Any timelines?
In fact, in terms of timeline, it is not in this budget, but the development of the prison is in the process.
Good night, Mr. Holness. I am Doreen Clark, a current master's student in climate studies who is deeply committed to addressing climate resilience and sustainable development in the Caribbean. Many students, including myself, have faced challenges in receiving responses or follow-ups when reaching out to government offices, including the Office of the Prime Minister regarding students' affairs or national development initiatives. Given your commitment to propelling the nation forward and fostering an inclusive and progressive government, what steps are you or the government going to take to improve engagement with students and young professionals who seek to contribute to Jamaica's development but struggle to receive a timely response from key government institutions?
I'm disappointed to hear that you have not gotten a response from my office. But
So
my staff is here, they've taken note, and we will search the emails, but we will speak with you directly. As I said earlier, bureaucracy is now a constraint on growth. It's the reality. And it's not just a reality for Jamaica, it's a reality for many countries. And you would see right across the world that countries are taking very serious steps to treat with the bureaucracy that is constraining growth. And it is not just in permitting and approval. It is in the business processes that does not place the customer at the center of the activity. And that's the real issue. So you do have my commitment, not just in words, but in the actions that we are going to be taking, that the public bureaucracy must put the customer, yourself, the citizen, at the center of the business processes. So there will be a significant effort towards business process re-engineering for efficiency and customer service and satisfaction. So you can rest assured that that will be done.
Good evening, Mr. Prime Minister. How are
Good
you?
evening, my dear.
Taitu Heron, Senior Social Development Specialist. And
I missed you in Jamaica.
Yes, I know, you would have. Good to see you again, though. Anyway, just for the record, we both went to UE at the same time, and other professional interactions.
Yes.
Yes. All right, so my question is related to CARICOM and the Jamaican government's role in the Council for Finance and Planning and the Committee of Central Bank Governors. Anybody here in Barbados will know how challenging it is to get monies between Barbados and Jamaica. And most of us have connections in Jamaica, whether through work, family, or whatever. So I guess one of the things that what I'm asking you to address is, I had to look it up because I wanted to know who was the current representative of Jamaica on this CARICOM committee since Nigel Clark had left, if it was. Okay, so let me get to the question then. So I'd seen in the Article 4 that governs the committee, that's the revised Treaty of Chaguaramas. There are two things. One, to promote recommend arrangements for the free convertibility of currencies of the CARICOM member states on a reciprocal basis. And the other one had to do with promoting and facilitating the adoption of measures for fiscal and monetary cooperation among member states. Therein lies my query. How can we improve the regional financial infrastructure between our countries that can allow for far more straightforward movement of monies across Caribbean currencies?
A very good question. A minister is going to answer you.
Thank you.
I actually don't have a perfect answer for you, Taitu. I can say that the COFAP has a rotating chairmanship. It's ministers of finance who take the chair and I believe SG is a six month rotation? Or it's a year? COFAP, I think it might be a year. I think St. Kitts Nevis is the current chair. Jamaica last chaired, I believe, 2 years ago. There are many programs, initiatives, and projects that are on the agenda of COFAP to allow for better movement of capital, better cooperation and functioning between the economies of CARICOM. And I cannot tell you what the specific challenges are. I don't think they're grounded in the rotation or anything like that, but there are bureaucracies within.
In fact, Minister, I would say that I don't think it has anything to do with the COFAP. I think the issue is really the international banking system, where the corresponding banking and
COFAP is part of it.
Yes,
because there are initiatives that, when they are in place, will improve the movement of capital between our countries. Foreign exchange availability is a different issue. That is your central banking system. And some of the difficulties, quite frankly, are grounded in the fact that CARICOM is still sovereign countries with very separate bureaucracies. Prime Minister spoke about the intransigence of bureaucracies. When you multiply that, and part of the difficulty is now cooperating. There have been things that have come forward. Jamaica says, well, we can't wait, we're going to do it now. We do it now, and then by the time there's another program, it's now incompatible with what we have done, like in procurement. How many years did it take us for the procurement protocol? By the time there was a harmonized program and a platform, Jamaica had different technology. We had our laws in place already. There were other countries that maybe didn't want to move to some of the things we had moved to, like giving women and small business extra points. So all manner of things happen. We continue to work at it. We still believe in the project, but initiatives have varying levels of buy-in and energy. I do think we'll make progress more under this chairmanship of Barbados, because Prime Minister Motley has been trying to press again on the movement of capital. And if not, when PM takes chair in July, we'll try and get some energy around that again as well.
Good night, PM Holness. Good night to the delegation. I'm David Bromfield, a student at Cavell, law student, and also constitutional chairperson for JESAC. I think my question is more directed to the minister.
Sure.
As it pertains the CSME and free movement within the Caribbean region, though I would like to talk about the stipend as well. This looms great on my heart. So sometimes, and I'm going to be, direct, Minister, I feel as though Jamaicans are treated as second-class Caribbean citizens whenever we're traveling within the Caribbean region. I do understand that we do have a privileged passport in comparison to other international passports, but I want to focus more on the French Antilles. Jamaicans require a visa to visit the French Antilles, and it's quite saddening. While Martinique, Guadeloupe, St. Martin are French territories, they're also Caribbean islands. Thankfully, Martinique is now an associate member of CARICOM yesterday, and I saw, Minister, when you were coming at the airport, you said that the CSME and free movement within the Caribbean looms heavy on your heart as well. And so I want to know if we can't get a wave of visa restriction, but a relaxation, similar to St. Martin, the Dutch side, where if you have a full validity US visa, Jamaicans are able to enter the country. The truth is, most Jamaicans, the visa that we apply for and we have is a full validity US visa, not a UK visa and not a Schengen full validity visa. And even when you do that on the French embassy, the wizard, as soon as you put Jamaican passport, it's out of the window. Regrettably, I had to appeal a decision to the French embassy because I was refused, and I knew it was based on my Jamaican passport. Thankfully, that was successful because I knew I qualified. So that's my question, and also in relation to, there's some, I don't have clear clarity. The Gleno a couple years ago spoke about the Schengen visa waiver, and that Jamaica did not submit a couple years ago when the Eastern Caribbean was submitting. I'd also like to know why, if you can say, and what are we doing in relation to that, if we have any plans for a waiver anytime soon.
Let me just put this closer. So the visa issue is a very difficult one. And it's difficult because where we're not granted access, it is, sad to say, usually grounded in conduct which has placed us in a particular category. So every time somebody asks, in fact, I don't like to discuss it because I don't like to admit that, but it is the reality. And when I admit it publicly, it affects my ability to advocate, which I continue to do. Not publicly, because these processes are not public. These are the things that require technical work and quiet diplomacy. That's a general statement on visas and Jamaica's passport. In respect of free movement, I think we're all quite clear that it's not quite free, and full free movement is not quite full. Cayman is an associate member. Bermuda is an associate member. BVI is an associate member. TCI is an associate member. Jamaicans don't have visa-free access to those countries. Cayman made a facilitation that says that if you have a US visa and you're coming from the US, not just have it, you're coming, and this is something that we need to take up again with the Premier, because she's behind it. So there are limitations. We have been explaining to governments that the Jamaica of today is a different Jamaica. When visa-free access was withdrawn from us, it was a time when we were a different country. We have digitized the security in our passports so that fraud is now practically impossible. Our participation in Interpol and APIS systems in exchanges of information and travel information is now so deep and embedded that there's no need to fear a Jamaican citizen. You wouldn't know who has bought a passport, who has bought a ticket. There's no need to...
And you would know who has bought a passport.
Well, it's a different, that's above my pay grade, yeah. So we are telling the different story. We speak about the economic reforms, we speak about our record low, historically low unemployment, the fact that the migratory conduct of Jamaicans is not driven in the same way and in the same magnitude that it once was. Because we are creating opportunities, we are doing more for citizens to stay home so that they don't need to fear an influx with visa-free conduct. With visa-free access. We are making some progress. The article that had spoken about Jamaica not submitting an application when other countries did was not quite accurate. But that's a whole different conversation. What I can say to you is that we continue to have targeted advocacy on the issue. We don't discuss it publicly because that does not garner success, because visa processes are generally very, very jealously guarded by countries. Do you know that many countries need a visa to visit Jamaica?
Yeah.
Right. So there's always a sense that your immigration, your rights of border control are very jealously guarded by countries. And it's a difficult thing to get that.
But Minister, here's what I would say to you. Listen, it is time that we have a net influx of people into Jamaica. It is time that our Jamaicans feel that they can flourish and grow in Jamaica. Our unemployment rate is at 3.2%. That's practically full employment. Practically. So labor is now a constraint on growth. And even with what is happening with the deportation of Jamaicans, in former times, we would look at it as a major threat to the country. Now we have to look at it as maybe this is an opportunity for the country to reclaim some skills, because some of the people who are going to come back, they were working in hotels. They got exposed to giving service on an international platform. Some of them may have been working in IT. Some of them have been exposed to other skills and technologies that we should really try to reintegrate them into the society. There are also some demographic issues that we have to pay attention to. Jamaica is a fairly young population, but you know what? We're an aging population. And can you imagine that we're at the point where we're going to say that we need more labor? That is the reality for Jamaica. It's the same thing for Barbados. They've been thinking very seriously about how they can expand their population to keep the economy going. That's where Jamaica is right now, but the mindset of Jamaicans is still have to go overseas to make it. Very soon that will change when people realize that they can't go overseas again and they have to make it in Jamaica. What the government is trying to do is to create the economy so that you can make it in Jamaica. So, listen, man, the next decade for Jamaica is when everybody's going to be begging us to come to their country, because we have the tech skills. They see our people as law-abiding, hard-working, efficient, and productive, and they're going to want us to come, and they're going to remove all the visas. And at that time, we will say, no, Jamaica, the place of choice, to live, work, raise families, do business, and retire in paradise. You come instead. That's what we're going to do.
So in the interest of the fact that we only have 10 minutes left in this wonderful facility, and we have our wonderful Prime Minister and his delegation who are traveling at 3 in the morning, I must apologize regarding the truncating of the questions, which I must again urge.
You can just take the last one.
And while we present the questions in a very brief sense, we'll only take those who are currently in the lines. And we'll take 2 at a time.
Good night, Prime Minister Holness, delegates, and to my fellow Jamaicans. My name is Kyle Carter. I am a second-year law student at Caville, and I also sit on the executive as a sports representative. Now, my question is regarding the proficiency of the JAMVAT program in Jamaica. I'm considering that it is the leading scholarship program which is the most beneficial and accessible to Jamaican students studying abroad. However, I believe there exists a disconnect where the feasibility of the requirements to earn the scholarships are called into question, being that the requirement for the scholarship is to complete 200 hours of community service whenever you return in the summer or Christmas. Considering that many students who study abroad are not of the same financial background, it may not be sustainable to set aside 200 hours for community service when they would have been allocated time to working or earning money. So my question is, how can the requirements for the JAMVAT scholarship, particularly the 200-hour community service obligation, be adjusted to make it more feasible for Jamaica?
Make a recommendation.
Lovely, thank you. So my suggestion would be to either, one, lower the amount of required hours for community service, or possibly allow the managing officer at the Minister of Education the power to waive the hours for students at Caville, contingent on academic achievements, student advocacy, and financial need, because as our executive, most of us would be sitting on at least 3 executives. I myself am the Hall Chair of the Sherlock Hall, and I believe...
So the issue for the government is that it's public funds that we're giving you. You may not come back. How do we get something from the public funds? So make a recommendation in line with the public of Jamaica getting something back from the public funds. So, but I'm not at 11 o'clock thinking about what that could be, but your brain would be obviously fresher than mine in this regard. So make a recommendation. My staff is here. We'll take it on board. I'll pass it to the Minister of Education.
Well, our fundraising officer has a recommendation.
One recommendation, which a lot of other countries do, we come back and we work for 5 years. A lot of us are law students, we're attorneys, we're planning to go back to Jamaica.
Bond after the fact. Yeah. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
What is great is that you sound like you're committed to keeping the bond. What has been happening, unfortunately, is people just either pay out the bond or they just leave and don't pay it with the debt, with it hanging. And so that's been a real difficulty, and it's why the policy changed. But I know Prime Minister is always open to doing more and doing better and doing differently, so I'm sure he's going to take care of it.
We'll take it on board. We'll discuss it. I'll bring it to the Minister of Education, and it's in the public domain now, so it's something that we have to consider.
Again, I must stress, please, I would recommend go straight to your question so that the others who are in the line may be able to also ask. Thanks.
Okay, good evening, everyone. I'm John L. Henry, first year law. So you started with a long issue bringing up the challenges of our history, including the struggles of colonialism. With that in mind, how do you envision guiding the country forward just beyond mere good intentions so that we can work towards becoming the Singapore of the Caribbean? So what steps do you believe are necessary to ensure that we avoid falling into neocolonialism?
All right, no, it's a good question. It's a good question. So, as I said, the last decade is to get the fiscal affairs in order, and those are entrenched in law now, and there is strong political consensus, and I would think that it is now part of the political economy, meaning it is a significant number of voters consider that when they are making their decision. The second step is to get the economy to grow beyond the threshold that it has been growing for the last 20, 30 years, which is 0 to 2%. So we need to break out of that threshold. And to do that, we need to increase productivity, upskill our workforce, improve our security, improve our infrastructure, improve the integration of technology. And all of those are being done as we speak. These are not plans, these are things that are actually in train.
My second part to that question is that, oh, okay. Okay, thank you. Thank you. Good night.
Okay. Good night, Mr. Prime Minister. I'm Olivia Pellinson, a past student of the Caribbean Maritime University. Over the last 2 years, I have studied customs and immigration. What future measures you have in place for graduates as myself having difficulties attaining a job in their field and wanting to reside in the country while having to repay their student loans?
So your field is in customs and immigration?
Yes.
I'm actually surprised that you're having difficulty of finding a job in customs and immigration. In fact, we have reformed Jamaica customs, and I do know that they are at a point where they have taken over some other functions, and that they would be highly interested in having persons like yourself apply. I think you should watch the newspaper in Jamaica very carefully, because they have taken over a very critical function in terms of the security of containers and so forth, and they are looking for new personnel. So you should really, in fact, write to them and ask them.
Okay, thank you.
In fact, if you speak to give your contacts to a staff member, I will pass on your details.
Good evening, Prime Minister. Young lady says she's a graduate of CMU. I'm a graduate of GMTI before it became CMU. So I'm sorry. I'm a mariner. My question though don't have anything to do with that. My question is about Jamaica's final court of appeal. You have expressed a view that you believe it should go to a referendum. It's a view that I share. There's a view that some, like my wife, who believe that it should remain in the UK. I am for the CCJ, and you have expressed a view that our final court may be in Jamaica. 2 questions. First one, do you see a referendum happening before the general election? That's one. And the other one is, we have 3 choices. The question that might be put to the people, will it include the 3 options that you've envisioned in this referendum? Would it be 3 questions, 3 options put to the people, or how do you see it happening?
So I'm not envisioning a referendum before the general election, so that you can take that off the table. Look, we can't play around with justice. Justice is literally life or death. So it's something that we have to be very careful with. And I think a conservative approach to treating with the issue is the best bet for the country. That in no way takes away our dreams and ambition to be totally and finally free and politically independent. No, it doesn't change that. That ambition remains. And nobody can speak about wanting to be self-reliant, independent, and free, like myself. I have spoken about not just our political independence, but our economic independence. And right now, the focus of my administration is to ensure that we can continue to be politically independent by ensuring our economic independence. And I have spent my lifetime doing that. So that the question about where our final court is will ultimately be answered when the Jamaican justice system is so adequately resourced that there are no questions about how justice is delivered. These practical issues of how people get access to our local courts, how quickly our local courts turn over justice, these are more fundamental questions about justice, which in the scheme of everything that we have to do, that is where our focus should be. I am not going to get drawn into impractical issues where the practical issues that meet the road every single day resides in Jamaica with our current justice system. We have started on Jamaica becoming a republic. And I see it as a process. It will go through phases, and we have said that. So the first phase is the easier phase to do. If both political parties agree, then you go to the indicative referendum, and we become a republic. And then after that, we move to the next question about our final court. So I think we should just take it in practical steps, and I believe that that is the view of most Jamaicans. Take it in practical steps. And that is what I intend to do as Prime Minister of the country. And I'm not in any way, I've said this before, and I'm glad you asked the question, that it can be properly and fully explained to this audience.
May I just add also, Prime Minister, the fact that constitutional reform, where it takes place outside of wartime, so not a constitutional reform that comes out of revolution, etc. Internationally, it is standard to take it in phases because it therefore more likely has a chance of success. So we're not creating new ground necessarily in this. It is actually best practice and ensuring that you move in the phases that secure the greatest consensus at any point in time also is a factor in ensuring the success of that constitutional reform. So I just wanted to share those considerations for you as well.
Good night, Prime Minister. Just on that point, I hope that the diaspora gets a chance to have some input when that time comes.
Well, just to be very quickly on that, the diaspora is not excluded. Once you have a residence in Jamaica, you have registered in Jamaica, you are, you can be established as being in Jamaica. You can vote.
Well, once the facilities are there, then.
Yes, once you're registered, yeah. Like everywhere else, you come and register to vote.
Yes, my question is in relation to immigration. So after over 20 years of living here, started to explore my husband getting citizenship in Jamaica and realized that we would have to actually live in Jamaica for 5 years. Well, he would. My children, we got theirs sorted out very quickly. Kind of want to know why that is and if that is something that may be changing, because outside of the CARICOM skill certificate, yes, that's one avenue, but as a husband, I mean, I have Barbadian citizenship. He should be able to relatively easily get Jamaican
I'll allow the Minister of
citizenship.
Foreign Affairs to answer you.
This is one of the things that we're actually trying to work through. So last year when the announcement was made that we were going to full free movement, it was pointed out by me that there was going to be some technical work to be done, and I've not been wrong. All of us as CARICOM member states are working on how it is that we solve some of the immigration issues. Spousal issues have been surprisingly challenging because of the rights of non-CARICOM versus CARICOM spouses of whether nationals or non-nationals who are CARICOM citizens. There are different laws right across the piece. It is something that is being worked through because we do recognize that movement of families it wasn't the original thought process, but that the elements have to be worked through. So we've worked through that the kids can go to school, and we've worked through that you can bring your tools of trade, etc., but we've not worked out the spouses.
Which horse before the cart?
No, it's a good intention, without, as I've said.
The good thing is, though, that we are working on it, and we have identified the issues and some of the legislative changes that need to take place for it to be simplified. And sometimes it's going to require domestic treatment to be different as well.
Any timeline we hoping for? 2 years, a year, 5 years?
There's a 3-year transition period that's agreed for some matters and 7 for others, if you can believe it. Yeah, but...
No, but for her matter, it would be a little bit more immediate.
Well, I can't say. I can't say right off the bat, and I don't want to give you an incorrect answer. But it's something I can look at and share with Ella.
Okay. Thank you.
In touch. Yeah, no problem.
Good evening. I'm Osaze, former Guild president and Guild of Postgraduate president. Yes, it's a strong Trini accent, but by virtue of Jamaica's strong diaspora, my father is Jamaican. So in my daily life, I try to name my own fiscal discipline. So I want to carry the question back to economics in a sense. And so my question is, given the swift changes in trade and economic policy done by the new U.S. administration, what is Jamaica's perspective as it relates to navigating these changes? And also, if this was discussed at the CARICOM Heads of Government meeting, what was the consensus, if any, that you would be willing to share with us?
So the matter was discussed extensively. So just to be clear, there has been no indication of any change in U.S. trade policy towards the region and specifically towards Jamaica. But the pronouncements that have been made generally has given cause for concern to some members of the private sector. And my government, and I'm not speaking on behalf of the CARICOM, but my government is always trying to be ahead of the challenges that could come. So we always have a periscope that is giving surveillance to the horizon of what is likely to happen. The region has a trade negotiating mechanism which is very competent and well established. Jamaica is the lead of the Prime Ministerial Subcommittee in this regard, and they have done extensive work, even if in a preliminary fashion, as to what these what the tariffs could mean. Tariffs as a coercive tool, tariffs as a means of revenue, and tariffs as a means of rebalancing and getting towards a fairer trade. We don't know how the U.S. is going to use it in all its possible forms, but we should prepare for it. So we should prepare to negotiate. We should prepare to look at reviewing our tariffs. We should also prepare to take advantage of the opportunities that could come if there is a change in the tariff structure. So we are preparing. So we're doing our analysis and we are preparing. Certainly for our export industries, we're taking a very deep dive into what it could look like. But I would say this generally to the population here. By now, I think you all should understand that this is a different world. And you can't expect that the rules of the old world applies. And we can't expect as well that in this new world there will be sympathy for us. I think we have to face this new world with braveness, with a positive attitude, with a self-reliant attitude. And that's how I have approached these issues. You know, there is a kind of fatalistic sense that, oh, they're going to deport all of our Jamaicans and the trade is going to collapse. And my view is we should look for opportunities. We should be prepared to stand and negotiate and make our case. But internally, we need to develop our own economic strength to face this new world.
Good night, Prime Minister. I'm Stephen Ferguson. I work with the CARICOM institution. Well, my question is what is being done or planned to be done with respect to land ownership, especially when it is transferred from the grandparents down to the parents, down to us, and getting that transfer done quickly, cheaper, because that's some means to economic benefit.
Very good question, and so I'll avoid all the historic issues, and I'll say to you that we have passed a very important piece of legislation that has allowed what is called systematic land titling. So what the government does is to designate an area for systematic land titling. It puts in place an adjudication committee that all the issues that have to do with the establishment of the boundaries and the settlement of ownership goes to that committee. The government subsidizes sometimes 100% or through a loan the cost of surveying the land, which is usually part of the challenge in getting the land registered in the first place. And once that is done, they are put through an expedited process of getting their titles. So far, we have gone over 12, more than 12, close to 20,000 titles using this expedited process. And this year, we're going to now mainstream that in Jamaica. So we're moving in a very rapid way for the first time to ensure that persons who are in possession of land can have their economic rights to the land enshrined in title. Thank you, everyone.
So as we draw this very engaging evening to a close, I want to quickly just say a special thank you to Mr. Principal and Pro Vice Chancellor for being so gracious in allowing us more than 3 hours. And of course, the school, the Cave Hill School of, Cave Hill School of Business and Management, Dr. Greenidge and his team for also allowing us so many things in terms of the techie team who stayed with us. We're going to jump straight into the vote of thanks. And I'd like to, before I invite Mr. Marlon Mattison, the president of JASAC, just especially acknowledge the team, the entire planning team at the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, the Prime Minister's office, Jambar, JASAC, my office as well, the Jamaican High Commission for ensuring that this event was so well planned and executed. I am Honorary Rochester since I did not really introduce myself, and I was happy to serve as your master of ceremonies. Mr. Mattison, the lectern is yours.
Thank you very much, Mr. Rochester. Dr. the Most Honorable Andrew Holness, Prime Minister of Jamaica. Senator the Honorable Kamina Johnson-Smith, Minister of Foreign Affairs and Foreign Trade, and of course her team from the ministry. Ambassador Esmond Reed, Undersecretary, Foreign Trade Division, Ministry of Foreign Affairs and Foreign Trade. Mr. Honorary Rochester, Counselor of the Jamaica High Commission in Trinidad and Tobago. Ms. Ella Hoyos, Honorary Consul for Jamaica in Barbados. Ambassador Wayne McCook, OD, Assistant Secretary General, CARICOM Single Market Trade. Ms. Karina Cockburn, Country Head of the IDB in Barbados. The Honorable Madame Justice Chantal Ononewu, Honorable Justice of the Caribbean Court of Justice. Professor Sir Clive Landis, Pro Vice Chancellor, UE Cave Hill Campus. Mrs. Suzette Blair, President of the Jamaican Association of Barbados, and of course, her hardworking executive. Members of the executive of JASAC, Jamaica Association of Students at Cave Hill, and of course, my Jamaican students here. Ladies and gentlemen, fellow nationals joining us online, a pleasant afternoon to you all. That was very long. I'm wondering if everybody loves the sound of my voice at this point. I've been told it can be soothing. But anyways, we'll move on from there. It is incumbent upon me to move tonight's vote of thanks.